So, welcome everybody to the next episode of the G63 AMG outdoor scene. In the last episode we took a look at how we set up the camera with tone mapping and depth of field and so on and so forth. And today we want to look at how to animate the camera flights that you could see in the final scene. So what I did so far is we have this camera that we set up in our last episode, and I've imported the camera from the original scene. So this is fully animated already, and it has the glow already, which we will apply later on to our camera. But let's take it step by step so you can see that in the timeline, which by the way you can open by right clicking down here and then just check timeline to turn it on and off. You have a full timeline and you can see that the camera is fully animated. So what I basically did is I animated the camera, very basic, in one shot, and then you can see that I just switched it. So the camera is, let's say, 190 frames of movement, and then on frame 190 to 191 we're just switching the full perspective and the position. So let's just click through the frames and you can see we're still here. This is the last shot of the first, or the last frame of the first shot, and the next frame is already a different camera position, and the next scene is running afterwards, right? So we have that one. And for the transition, I've used the autofocus of the depth of field. So I didn't animate the depth of field in the first place. I did it later on for some reasons that we will discuss in the video now. Okay, so then I would say let's just start. And of course, we're not animating in the timeline, we're animating in the curve editor. So we go down here and click on curves, and you will see that there is the curved editor coming up. This is a horizontal editor, so I wouldn't recommend to dock it here, although you could. Because we're working over the timeline, I would recommend to dock it down here, so you have a bit more room for it, and then just select the middle field and press F to focus. And this way everything will be focused in this area, so you have a full overview. You can already see the way I animated it in the graphs, right? So there are the movements in the first place. Let's take a look here. So we got movement, and then there is a very quick change from one to another frame in terms of perspective. And then we got a movement, and then a quick change. And this is the way I've basically used to cut the camera views to each other, or the camera flights to each other. But yeah, you can already see as well that I didn't animate everything. So those are all the parameters that you could theoretically animate in the camera. All the noise of the fog, whatever, down to the very small details. But I basically only changed translation, rotation, and focus distance. And that's dependent on the depth of field. That's why we had to change that sometimes. As I already said, this is not 100% in line with the rest of the animation, the field of view, because sometimes we want to end or have a smooth camera transition from one point to another, but the field of view should, for example, focus the final point of interest sooner than the camera flight ends, right? And that's why sometimes I had to put that forward. But in regular, you usually have all the frames on one, or all the keys on one frame. Okay, then I guess let's start. So you can already see we just have one camera here, which is the one that I imported. So it's the one from the original file, but we want to go through it and check if we can create something similar from scratch now to explain it. And just to warn you up front, I'm not going to go through all of them, right? Let's do two shots, or two flights or three in the tutorial, and then you can take it from there, because it's the same principle. It just needs to be repeated for the different shots. So what we need to do first is switch to the camera that we want to animate, because I'm going to animate it while looking through the camera to see the end result. So the first thing, if you want to animate something in VRED, is always select it in the scene graph, then you see all the attributes that you can animate here in the list. Then go to the frame that you want to keyframe something on. And I'm using the timeline. You can see the curve editor is moving accordingly, so you can use either or. Go to frame 0, select the values that you want to animate or keyframe. In our case, this is the focus distance and rotation and translation. Right click and go key selected. And you can see VRED created some keys for us, keyframes for us. And yeah, so the values are stored now. Even if we move the camera and then we move the timeline, it will jump back to the frames that we already animated. Okay, so that's how you create a first animation or first keyframes, but let's see how we can override them, because of course that wasn't the first shot, right? We want to like make it look a little bit nicer. So maybe let's do something like that. First, the rotation. It's always interesting in animation to have different layers of object in the different layers of depth. So we have a very interesting wall of stones here. Then there is the car, then there is some other stones, and then there is the background. And if we move it, we got through the parallax, the things are moving differently in relation to the camera, which makes the movement look interesting. So let's just do something like that. Very basic movement for the beginning from a low angle, something like that. So let's start here. You already see the camera picks the focus automatically, right? So again, because I want to override the frames that I set for an example, right click, key selected, and now you can see they moved. So now this is the keyframes we have on frame 0. We go to frame 199, and if you don't, you can also use this small thing down here to type in which frame you want to jump to and move the camera to the end result that we want to look at. So I'm fine with that. We can also always come back to change it. Again, we're on frame 199, key selected, and this is the first animation. So now we have two different states that the camera is animated between. So first state on frame 0, end state on frame 199. If you want to play it, just go down here, hit the play button, and you can see if it's fine for you or not. I think it's okay. It's not the very best camera file, but I think it's for the example, it's fine. And now let's see how we go to the next one. And for that, I choose something completely different from the rear of the car. What I want to make sure is that we are switching between the states within one frame. So I want to go to frame 200 now, because the last information is on frame 199. And for that, as I said, let's do something completely different. So let's do the close-up shot that we saw in the movie as well. Something like that as a starting point, the Mercedes logo, and key selected. Again, key selected. And now you can see that we have a jump, right? So there is last shot of that, and then there's already the next shot here. So, and you see already one of the issues. Right now, we still have the focus distance in autofocus mode, right? So it's whenever there's no animation information, it is using the 55 transition frames to get to the new state. And that's something that we need to handle a little bit, because later on we're turning that off if the animation is completely baked. But let's zoom in, and so you can see that we have the flight, and then we have a quick change. And now, again, we are from 200 to 399, so we go to 399. And let's zoom a little bit out. I'm not sure what I did in the final one too much, but I think I moved it a little bit and I focused on change of focus. And now this is getting interesting because the autofocus doesn't let me, right? But what I want to achieve with this shot is focus on the G63. So I turn off autofocus, do it by double click, and then key selected. So you have to like always check It makes your life easier, but it also limits things that you can do if you turn it off, but you can use it to play around with. And then if you want to animate, you can just turn it off. I think that's what I did as well. So again, we have an animation that is, first of all, there's the defocus. Turn it off. So first of all, there's the focus on the Mercedes star, and then the focus moves to the G63. And this is one of the areas where I said, you see, it's still not sharp now in the, let's say, 2/3 of the animation. And this is one of the points where I said, okay, I try to keep all keyframes on the same frame, but in this case, the focus distance from my point of view needs to be ready sooner. So it needs to focus the G63 sooner than the camera flight is ending. And that's why I'm just selecting this focus distance and pull it forward. So the final value is reached earlier in time. I would say about now would be the right precision. So where are we? We are on 335. So what I can do, I can just select this keyframe, which is the last state of the focus distance, and just go up here to frame. And this is where you can change frames and values for a selected keyframe. And I just go in here and type in 335. This is where I want it to end. The value is fine because I want it to be crisp, and that's the value we determined to be the one that has the G63 in focus, and then the animation is fine. So if we play it now, you can see we have this small camera flight in the front, and then we have a quick change and have a focus change over time here for that. Pretty nice. And of course you can like continue that. I did like 20 or whatever different shots, detailed shots, other flights. Just play around with what you like. I think something that looked pretty nice for me as well was something like this. So maybe let's do a third and last one. And again, make sure that you autofocus. So I'm like, for me, this is natural. I'm double clicking all the time to make the autofocus, but yeah, make sure that if you either turn on autofocus, if you're in this phase of like defining the camera flights, or make sure that you always double click. I'll go for double click now because I have that under control. So again, this will be roughly the starting point. Let's do it like that with a focus on this area. And again, select the values, right click, key selected, and move to the new time, and then change the camera. Always the same behavior. Move to 599 and want to do something like this. And key selected. And again, we have this nice camera flight. So again, I'm not going to show all of them, right? So let's just play them from now. What we have, first camera flight, pretty nice. The same depth of field. Here we do have a transition of the depth of field. So we have that example as well that we talked about. And you see something that just happened, which is a good point to discuss. I pulled forward the focus distance, right? So I pulled that forward so you can see that here. Then this is the only keyframe that is in between one shot and the start of the next shot. What I should have done, which I didn't, is adding in a value that keeps this value throughout the shot until the next shot starts. So what's happening now, because I pulled that forward, and the next keyframe is the starting point of our next camera flight, it's basically interpolating between the two values directly, which I don't want, right? I want it to keep this value to this point and then suddenly jump to the new value. So yeah, that's something that I need to do. So I need to jump to 399, which is the last shot of this animation, and keyframe only the focus distance and with the value, but let's just keyframe it. It's wrong, I know, but key selected. and it has the wrong value, but now I can just grab the value here, which is 2155 something, copy it, and then go to the new keyframe. And thus I can show you how to change the value as well. Paste the value in, and you can see it's adapting it directly. This is exactly what I want to have, so press F to focus. So I want it to end earlier, yes, but I don't want it to already go into the next camera shot because that doesn't make sense. It should end earlier and then keep the value until the end of the shot, and that's what we have now. So it's good that it happened to me now, so I could show you that's what you need to take care of when you're animating the focus distance with this approach. Again, let's take a look. Hopefully now it works properly. We have this first shot, static depth of field, static focus distance. Next shot with the transition of the depth of field and the focus distance. We keep the value until the end of the shot to focus on the G63. And now we have the next shot, which is just a camera flight from the front to the back from a higher point of view. I think that is it. So there wasn't much magic to creating the camera animation at all. Of course, this is if we turn on the final camera, you can see it's way more, right? So I did way more shots. I think that's pretty clear, pretty easy as well. Just execute that through, build your own shots, find creative ways, creative angles that you can use, like this one, which I really liked a lot. Well, I think that's it already. Very quick one with the animation. It's, to be honest, it's also not the most complicated one. Let me know if you have any questions. Again, as always, feel free to comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you're not missing the next tutorial. Talking about the next tutorial, most likely will be about the light creation, because that's one of the final elements that we still need. Yeah, so thank you very much for tuning in, taking a look at the tutorials. I hope it helps you. As I said, feel free to ask any questions in the comments. I'm happy to help. And yeah, have a great day, everybody. And thank you.